Nkana, the famous song Nkana, whatever, and of course we expect that to happen tomorrow in the Ivory Coast as Nkana do take on San Pedro out there with a 3-0 advantage, and obviously we do expect that they will be, sit tight at the back and be able to get that important result that should send them into the group stage of the CAF Confederations Cup. And on commentary box today we're talking all things football, all things latest in terms of football, and we discussed a lot of things. And as we went for a break, coach was talking about player management, and I did get some text message that came through, and they were saying coach should amplify on the factor of confidence and substitutions, and why certain players are annoyed when they get substituted. How can we help the Zambian players to raise their level in terms of acceptance for substitutions, sitting on the bench, coming in as a substitute, because at the end of the day we all play for the team, and it's a team that must win. Individuals don't win, so sometimes it's change of tactics and they have to change the personnel. Coach,
yeah,
we did talk about this as we went for the break, and maybe just amplify a bit in the next few minutes so that our listeners can be able to understand which pedestal we should take in terms of improving player confidence, so that we can help the players to be able to understand that in game of football you complement each other. There is no player that is bigger than the team.
Yes, it's possible to improve the confidence of the player, but sometimes, most of the times, it's not done by the coach, because remember, the coach has got a high task of managing the whole team. So there has to be a department or a section for that. In some teams, they can hire a psychologist or a clinician, because these are the people who understand what goes on in a player, in the psychological mind of a player, what you should say to the player, and when you should say it, and how you should say it. Because at the end of the day, you want to convey a message that it's a teamwork rather than a personal success. Maybe in tennis you can talk about personal success, but even in tennis there are a lot of people that are supporting one Federer, or maybe Nadal, because at the end of the day, Nadal must report to someone on what he was doing, and they will have to be able to sit down and talk about it. But basically on football, the teams, they have no option now, because look, we are talking about more than 30 players in a team that the coach must be able to monitor every time, including his technical bench. And apart from that, there are also supporters. The coach also has to talk to the executive, so he has got a big task. If you look at the in a company scenario, you find that just a small company will have all the directorates in place, and there are people under them. So even in this football thing that has come now, for it to gain its ground and to show the cause, we have to have dedicated people who should be able to talk to players every time, because sometimes when a coach makes a decision on the bench, he has no time to explain to the player, because the game there's time allocated to the game. So he cannot come back and talk to the player what he was doing, or after the game, that time has already gone. The player is already frustrated, but it needs someone who is already seated on the bench, who is going to talk to the player as the coach is still monitoring the way the game is.
So, coach, what we are saying is it's normal for a player to ignore the coach or snub him, because at that point he's frustrated and no one has spoken to him. Until he goes to sit on the bench, that's where he should find someone who should talk to him now to be able to calm him down.
Yes.
Is that what you are saying?
Yes, that happens. If you look at most of the teams, when you're talking about the French team or whatever, you find that when the player is being received, maybe you'll be given a warm cloth. As is being given the warm cloth, someone who will shake his hands, hold him for some time and talk to him. That will also cool down the player.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But this same problem, we can't say it's a Zambian problem or African problem, because even in Europe, we see such happening. Players snapping the coaches, and that's where for me, it's even worse, because that's where players throw water at the coach.
Yes, it's
it's not really a Zambian problem or a Zambian mentality problem, African mentality problem. It's a problem of football.
Yes, it's
but how do you think that Europe is managing it better than us?
Yes, because they have people on the side. Because they have a lot of sections within the team. Everybody knows what he's supposed to do. It's not only the coach who is supposed to talk to the player why he was substituted. Because at the end of the day, when the decision of substituting the player is made, it's not only the coach sometimes who makes it. Even the assistant is involved. Even the psychologist in that team on that bench is involved. Even sometimes the team doctor is involved because he has to be told. Sometimes the coach might not have necessary information, but you ask the team doctor why the player might be limping in the ground, and maybe the team doctor will explain some things that the coach will be made to know there and then and be able to substitute the player. And sometimes what happens is that the player will be talked to by the coach. The coach might shout. Now, because this is what I'm talking about, communication, because the coach doesn't know how the player receives instructions, shouting at a player, for example, who was raised by the mom, is not good, because those people switch off immediately because they want to be, they want to feel like loved. You should beg them, in short. So the best way, if you have such a player in your team, you have to call them by the sidelines. Even if the game is on, you have to call them by the sidelines and explain to them the instructions that you want them to carry on. If you just shout at them, even if the instruction is good to change the game, they will not understand, and they'll think that maybe you are not taking care of them.
Coach, you keep referring to players raised by single parents and raised by both parents.
Yes.
And, is that just theory, or
No.
you have practical examples of players and how they behave based on who raised them?
Yes, I've got it. In the local league. I've seen some of the players, and international. I'll give you an example of which is in the public domain. An example of Ronaldo and Messi. For example, when you look at Ronaldo is a kind of a player who wants to be recognized, who wants to be felt. And when you look at his background, he was raised by the mom. The history says that he had a father, but the father was an alcoholic. So meaning that he couldn't manage. It was the mom who made sure that Ronaldo is where he is. So even when he was being taken to Sporting Lisbon Academy, Ronaldo always referred to his mom for what he had done. So if you look at Ronaldo, when even his departure at Real Madrid had something to do with emotions. Not that his performance was down, not that they had failed to increase his salary. And this is what he said when he was quoted by ESPN. He said, "I felt that inside the club, especially on the part of the president, I was not under the same consideration as I was when I started with the club. The first 4 or 5 years there, I had the feeling of being Cristiano Ronaldo. Then I felt it less. The look in the president's eyes told me that he had no longer felt the same, that I was no longer indispensable." So in short, he was telling the people that at some point between 4 and 5 years, I was being appreciated. After that, I felt that the president didn't appreciate me. So the best way for him was to locate another club, which was Juventus. And when you look at the two of them, Messi and Ronaldo, they are all giants. I'm comparing the two giants, which have won both 5 Ballon d'Ors. Messi was comfortable even coming from the bench when he comes from an injury. But when Ronaldo, when you bring him from the bench, even when he's coming from an injury, he wouldn't perform well. Why? Because he was like nagging. He's nagging. You cannot tell, but you can tell by the body language. So with Zidane, I think Zidane had his own way of handling players, which meant that Ronaldo could conform to it. But even when you look at his quote here, he's not referring to the coach, because I think the coach was able to handle him nicely. But he knew that the ones who approved contracts is not considering that he's not indispensable. So the best way was to leave earlier than to be dispersed.
So what do you do to players who are raised by single mothers in order to improve their confidence? Is there something that you must do, or you must just treat them differently? Yeah,
you just have to treat them differently, because the way the doing is treating them differently, so that they should also appreciate. So you have got, for example, you have got this guy who was raised by both parents. If he comes in, he makes a mistake, there and then on the group, you can shout and talk about it, there and then it ends. But the other gentleman, you have to bring him out of the group. You have to shield him from the people, talk to him on the sidelines and tell him what he's doing wrong and what he's doing right, and emphasize on what he's doing right. Then he's going to perform in the team. They are not bad people, but the only thing is the approach. Here now we have to just go into an emotional part of football, because remember that a player has got complicated blend, and that includes his technical part, his tactical part, his physical part, and his emotional part. And if his emotional part is not well handled, all these other three, which is technical, tactical, and physical, they will never work anywhere, because emotional works at a subconscious level in the mind, which means that his decisions, no matter how physically good he is, he will not make good decisions if you don't handle him properly, especially with words. That's why they say words are everything.
Okay, Coach, that's brilliant, and I'm sure that what you said will help someone out there in terms of managing other players. And you've looked at the Zambian scenario, and you think that if we do apply that aspect, if it's not there, it should be able to help us to be able to manage players better and be able to get the best out of those players, considering their upbringings.
Yes, because in Zambia you find that, like for example, if people didn't manage Cristiano Ronaldo well, we would have been missing out in the world of football by now, because that means his career was going to be killed maybe by the time he was at an academy at Sporting Lisbon. But because psychologists and clinicians at Sporting Lisbon, they were able to work with him and be able to understand him, you know. So that also must be done in Zambia, because there are kids that are coming from single parents that are very good with football, but because they are not appreciated, because they don't feel appreciated, they abandon the career of playing football at an early stage. This also goes to young girls. There are young girls there that are playing good football, but because we don't know how to handle them, we don't know how to talk to them, then you find that by the time she reaches 13 years old, she abandons the career and she starts concentrating on a career for everyone. At the end of the day, as a nation, we are losing out on first advertising, because if you have got a best player, for example, the way Barbara is playing in Spain now, Zambia is now being, you don't have to advertise Zambia, but the moment Barbara is playing 90 minutes for her team, it means that the Zambia flag is being lifted. Whether you like it or not, Barbara is doing a great job for Zambia. So if you forget this kind of treatment or special treatment for such people, that means you are going to lose out on the talent. And the talent, once lost, it's very difficult to discover it in another person. But
let's move a little bit forward, taking that argument forward. What about you as coaches? If you are raised by a single mother, does it affect you? Does anything show as a coach that this coach was raised by a single mother, that's why he's doing like this?
Yes.
What examples can you give us?
I will tell you that the coaches that were raised by single moms, these are the coaches where they choose players basing on what the player, how the player treats the coach, not how the player performs. So if you realize, even in your workplace, if you know that your boss was raised by the single mom, you just go there, you chaffer. Let me say that word. You chaffer your boss, or you chaffer your coach. Then the coach will say, these are the guys that I need in my team. Not even say that they are performing well. That's why you find that such coaches, they end up on the other side of losing. Because there's real competition, then you take competition on the table, not in the field. So like you are choosing players basing on how they treat you as a coach, because you want to feel important. You want to feel like you are the boss, in short. So as you are feeling that you are going to choose the people that chaffer you, at the end of the day, you are losing the direction of the whole team.
Okay.
Yes.
What about recognition when you after your playing career, do you and you played for different teams? How do you get who do you recognize in such a case as having impacted on you more than the others who coached you? Because coaches are always asked this question when in your playing career, which coach impacted you most for you to get to the level where you are?
You know, so you find that these coaches, they will be able to for example, if we talk about at international level, you find that these coaches that were raised by a single mom, they will be able to mention a coach who gave them a lot of accolades, like recognized them, like treated them special, like they were not treated by like in a group format. So you find that it's very rare. You can be with such a coach, like you can be such a player. For example, if I'm treating a player who was raised by a single mom nicely, he will remember me more than the actual time he gave me for the playing time. Okay. Then what happens that when he meets another coach who treats him like anybody else, he will never recognize them. So the issue is you put more emphasis when you're treating a player who was raised by a single mom. You put more emphasis on appreciation. While the other guy,
that is opposite to what, if we can quote what Thierry Henry said, that's opposite. Because if you talk about his career at Arsenal and his career at Barcelona, he recognized more the Barcelona. But he had a great time at Arsenal, and at Arsenal, I think he was respected more than he was respected at Barcelona because there was a lot of competition.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you look at his quotes, if you look at his background, even when you look at the way he's doing things, you find that he's more into it that a player must appreciate him. Okay, a player must appreciate him. Then that's when he's going to do the best he's going to put in the player into the team. If you look at the time that he spent at Arsenal, maybe Arsenal Wenger treated him like anybody else, so that he could face competition, and he really thrived. But how do you spend almost more than 7 years at Arsenal and more than just 4 years at Barcelona? Then you come to claim that Pep Guardiola was the one that had more impact on me than the other coaches. And meanwhile, you only had two great coaches in your life, Arsene Wenger and